Hello, and thank you for viewing my final capstone presentation to conclude my 4 years as a student at Pacific Lutheran University and as a student within the School of Arts and Communication. To start us off, I want to talk a little bit about what my project is and how I came up with the idea. So as you can see on my title page, my presentation is going to be about Media Lab rebranding. Now, to start off, I'm going to tell you a little bit about who Media Lab is. Media Lab is an applied multimedia and research program based in the School of Arts and Communication within Pacific Lutheran University. They are an award-winning, student-run media organization with expertise across the media spectrum. Whether you need market research, photography, graphic design, writing, video, public relations, event planning, or more, Media Lab can work for you. I have been a part of this organization for the last 3 years, since my sophomore year here at Pacific Lutheran University, and I actually spent the last year as the Assistant General Manager of this organization. Our mission statement states, Media Lab seeks to create high-quality content and services for community partners such as nonprofits, media outlets, government agencies, and other organizations, while simultaneously providing pre-professional opportunities for talented and capable Pacific Lutheran University students. As you saw on that title page, my final project for my capstone was a rebrand of Media Lab. This organization has kept the branding that it currently has for the last several years, and it was just kind of sort of time for a refresh into it. What we're going to cover today is who is Media Lab, as we just spoke about, the rebranding process that I went through, and how all of this applies to my 4 years of schooling here. I told you a little bit about who Media Lab is and their mission statement, but a lot of what Media Lab is also their current branding. And as you can see here, we have kind of their logo history. The first one that you see on top is the former or current branding. It's been in place for the last several years, and in my opinion, it was just time for an update so that we had a new and refreshed look. And then you can see on the bottom, that would be the logo that I have been working on and came up with for an updated look for the organization. So next up in what we're going to cover is the actual rebranding process that I had gone through. I started out talking with the client about what their needs were, and as a member of the organization myself, I kind of had a good understanding of what the organization was looking for, what we were looking for as a team, and what Media Lab needed. The last 3 years we've been trying to go through a rebrand process, but no final product has ever been made because it's been hard to make a decision that encompasses everything that Media Lab does. So I spoke with our advisor and some of the teammates about what they were looking for as far as a rebrand, and we all agreed that it needed to be something modern, minimalistic, professional looking, and just a very updated brand from what we currently hold. So I agreed with all of those aspirations and got to work looking for inspiration from similar organizations in the community, outside of the community, and across the nation. So after all of that research, I took to my pen and paper and started sketching ideas of what I thought could encompass everything that Media Lab had to offer. And this was a really hard task because Media Lab offers things from photography and videography to marketing materials and event planning and things like that. So there's no one image that really encompasses everything that Media Lab can do. So I decided that instead of having some sort of icon to show who we are, it was important to create our own icon and use a little bit of typography to really show our creativity and how endless the opportunities are within Media Lab. So as you can see in the logo that I ended up coming up with, it is a square, and on the inside there is an M and an L to state Media Lab, and these form a circle. The circle shows that we are a very well-rounded organization and that we have many abilities and many skills and things, and then the two lines that kind of never end show that we are open to any possibilities and that we don't close ourselves off. So after I finalized that logo, I brought it to a graphic design professor at Pacific Lutheran and the advisor. They both agreed that it was a great visual to encompass Media Lab, and I got to work on the next steps of the branding process, which involved picking out typography and colors and putting everything into one cohesive style guide. So I started to get to work looking through hundreds of different typefaces and fonts and colors and things like that, and ultimately decided on Roboto Slab as the typeface of Media Lab. So the bolded typeface will be used as our main headings. Any sort of titles that you have to place on any work will be seen in Roboto Slab, and in all capitals. This one shouldn't be used in anything other than all capitals. And then after that comes the subheading font. This one is just going to be Roboto Regular, and everything after the title can be done in normal type. It doesn't have to be in all caps. And then our body text is Roboto Light. So it is all the same typeface, but the fonts are different throughout, providing some variation and contrast between the different hierarchy of the type. I had to decide on colors, and when I went through the original process, I didn't want our logo and branding to stray too far away from the current branding that Media Lab holds, but I realized that the sort of messaging icon that Media Lab currently has is a little outdated, and I wanted to kind of move away from this icon. So my new iconography ended up being very different from the current branding, so I wanted to keep the colors fairly similar. The current logo can be seen in black and white. It's not to be used in any sort of color, but there are accent colors that I imagine to be used when needed. So as you can see, there is this bluish color, which is actually just a more vibrant and saturated version of the blue that you saw in the original messaging icon. And then there's a new gold yellow color. Now Media Lab had this gold yellow color formerly, but I changed it so that it matches the gold yellow color that PLU currently holds. So it is the exact same hex code. These decisions, it was time to put everything that I had decided on into one cohesive style guide, and eventually publish it. And then the final step in the rebrand process was to actually pitch my ideas and the style guide to my client. This will just be a culminating presentation about the work that I have done. And finally, as I mentioned before, the third thing I wanted to talk with you guys about today is how all of this applies to my 4 years of schooling here at Pacific Lutheran University. A lot of the work that I did on this particular style guide and speaking with the clients and finding the target audience and things was learned through my Communication 461 class, which is advertising, PR, and campaigns. In this class, we met a nonprofit organization from Pierce County and were given the task of doing a rebrand for them, actually. So many of, if not all of the skills that I applied to this capstone project came from that particular class. We did the same. We spoke with the client, understood their needs, started sketching out ideas, finalized logos, then moved on to typography and colors, and eventually provided them with a cohesive guide to apply to their new brand if they would like to. And next up, a lot of the materials that I had to use for the rebrand process were Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, Adobe InDesign, which is ultimately what I created the guide in. A majority of these skills came from my time in Media Lab. We have learned how to use almost all of the Adobe programs through this pre-professional organization, so without them I would not have been able to provide such a clean and published looking style guide for my final capstone. And then finally, the pitch and presentation that I'm giving you today, these skills were learned through my public speaking course, Communication 212. We learned everything from giving persuasive speeches to informative speeches and basically everything in between. Just to kind of wrap things up and go over exactly what we talked about today, I told you about Media Lab, who they are, what they do, what their mission statement is, what their values are, to have a better understanding of the organization and what they were looking for. I went through my rebranding process with you guys, and then finally, I told you about how all of this applied to my 4 years at Pacific Lutheran University as a communications student. I hope you enjoyed listening to my presentation and enjoy the branding that I had come up with. Thank you.